Young Heir disguised as a janitor discovers an incredible life-changing truth in just 30 days. Jake stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the reflection staring back at him. The clean-cut hair and tailored clothes of an heir had been replaced by a frayed cap and oversized work shirt. He wasn't just playing dress-up. Today, he was escaping his gilded cage and stepping into the real world. Alone in the mansion's empty hallways, he felt suffocated by wealth's obligations. It was time for a change. There was something electrifying about the smell of cleaning supplies and the distant sounds of laughter echoing through the high school halls. He blended in with the crowd of janitors, those unassuming heroes working tirelessly as laughter and chaos unfolded around them. He watched kids of all shapes and sizes juggle textbooks and part-time jobs. Each face told a story that Jake desperately wanted to be part of. As days turned into weeks, Jake formed a bond with Maria, a bright scholarship student who lit up the room with her determined spirit. He was taken aback by how effortlessly she navigated her studies and jobs, driven by a fierce will to succeed. They'd share pizza on the worn-out floor of the janitor's closet, laughing as they swapped stories. Maria described how her mother worked 3 jobs just to keep them afloat, and Jake could feel his heart swell. "Why do you even care about school?" he once asked her, bemused. "Because it's the only chance I have," she replied, her eyes blazing with the fire of resilience, and in that moment, something shifted in Jake. He saw the struggles that underpinned her hope, and he realized just how little he knew about sacrifice. But that wasn't all he came for. Word on the street was there was a treasure hidden in the school's corridors, handlebars from a centuries-old bicycle, believed to hold immense historical value. That treasure could fund the school's struggling programs. However, as he wallowed in the life of the everyday, Jake discovered something far more valuable: connection. The tales shared by veteran janitors, stories dripping with wisdom and grit, sunk deeply into his heart. "Money doesn't matter if you're not making a difference," an old janitor named Mr. Peters said one day, his hands rough and weary. "What counts is what you build with your heart." Just when Jake thought he had everything figured out, a storm brewed over the school as his family's wealth began to threaten its funding. He stood helpless during board meetings, feeling the pulse of anger and bitterness rising. His parents' decisions tore at him, pitting his family against the community that gave him warmth, and Jake didn't know which side to choose. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As tensions rose within the faculty and the community, Jake found himself in the eye of the storm. One particular meeting erupted into chaos, voices raised and fists clenched. He felt the weight of the room, the burning anger and the shared hope in the air. It was at that moment the truth came crashing in: his family was directly linked to the injustices these people faced. A tidal wave of guilt washed over him, spinning him into depths of confusion. Jake stood alone, caught between his lineage and an identity he was just beginning to form. Hope flickered in the air, but fear gripped him tightly as he faced a community gathering where he would have to choose. Would he stand for the truth, or remain sheltered in his family's shadow? The realization crashed down on him, leaving him breathless. He was at a crossroads, teetering on the edge of a world unknown. The community's anticipation hung in the air, and Jake knew his life was about to change forever. Jake's heart raced as he stood there, the crowd's murmurs like a tide pushing him toward an unknown shore. Faces turned toward him, eyes filled with a mix of hope and apprehension. It was in that moment he realized what was at stake, not just for himself but for the community he had come to admire and respect. He thought of Maria, her laughter filling the janitor's closet, a beacon of resilience. He remembered Mr. Peters' words echoing in his mind, "What counts is what you build with your heart." But what heart did he have? Was it the one burdened by privilege or the one eager to forge new connections, born of shared struggles? The principal gestured for silence, and Jake felt the collective heartbeat of the room. He took a deep breath, every malfunctioning nerve in his body screaming for him to step back, but he refused. This was his moment. He stepped forward, pushing against a tide of anxious energy. "Listen," he began, his voice shaking at first, but soon finding strength. "I used to think wealth meant everything, that it made me better somehow. But it doesn't. I've seen how hard you all work, and it makes me realize I have a choice. A choice to stand up for what's right." Gasps rippled through the room. A few faces lit up with disbelief, but he pressed on. "I've learned so much from all of you, and I can't stay silent. Our school, this community deserves better. We can't let my family's decisions destroy what you all have built. Let us work together to find that treasure. Let's fund those programs." The anger in the room simmered and began to shift. People looked at one another, and Jake felt a flicker of hope ignite. This wasn't just his fight anymore, it was collective, a resistance rooted in unity. But then, his eyes found the sad gaze of his father in the back of the room, vigorously shaking his head. The look on his father's face spoke volumes, warning him to stay in his lane, to remain within the safety of the family's expectations. It pierced through his moment of courage, threatening to undo everything he was trying to build. Jake swallowed hard, feeling the stakes rise higher. Would he choose loyalty to blood or a bond forged by genuine connection? He turned back to the crowd, who now leaned in, waiting for him to continue. "Together," he urged, his words pouring out with a newfound conviction, "we can turn this around. I can persuade my family to reconsider, or I'll fight against them if that's what it takes. We can make a difference." From the corner of his eye, he saw Maria nodding, her smile bright and encouraging despite the heaviness in the air. That simple gesture steeled his resolve. She believed in him, and he would not let her down. He took another step forward, grounding himself in the moment. The principal's voice returned, calmer now. "If we're going to fight together, we need a plan." But as the meeting shifted gears, Jake could feel the knot of uncertainty tighten in his chest. Was he strong enough to truly defy his family? His hands shook at the thought. Would they see him as a traitor? Would they cut him off? The plan would need to be bold, perhaps reckless, but this was Jake's moment, and he wouldn't let it slip away. He had to confront the shadows of his past head-on. His heart pounded, aware that the real battle lay ahead. As the meeting wrapped up, an idea sparked in his mind that would unite everyone. Something risky, something that could change everything. Jake stood at the lip of this new beginning, his future unfurling before him. Would he be able to dig deep enough to unearth the treasure they sought and mend the ties that threatened to tear him apart? Would he find a way to balance who he was with who he wanted to be? In this moment, Jake felt the weight of destiny pushing him forward. What he didn't know was how much he would have to sacrifice to get there. The air in the room buzzed with anticipation as Jake stepped down, heart racing, adrenaline coursing through him. The crowd mingled, voices rising and falling, some excited, others still hesitant. Jake felt the weight of their gazes, each one filled with a flicker of hope, mingled with uncertainty. Maria approached him, her eyes shining with that same resilience he had always admired. "Jake, that was incredible!" she exclaimed, her hands clasped together in excitement. "I can't believe how far you've come." "Thanks, Maria," he replied, feeling a warmth spread through him. Yet beneath his confidence lay a darkness, a fear that started to claw at him. "But what if they don't believe me? What if my parents don't back down?" She placed a hand on his arm, grounding him. "You won't know until you try. We're all with you. It's time for change, and you're paving the way. Just imagine what we could achieve together if we keep fighting for our school." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, Jake could envision a future where he wasn't just an heir or a name, he could be a legacy of hope. Yet, even with that vision, he couldn't shake the bitter reality of his father's disapproval. Would it all come crashing down around him? "We need to gather everyone," Jake said suddenly, steeling himself. "Let us meet tomorrow after school, brainstorm ideas, form a plan. I'll rally the students. If we go in with a strong front, my parents won't have a choice but to listen." Heads nodded, and murmurs of agreement spread. Jake's confidence swelled a little more. Maybe he could do this. Maybe enough voices united could bring about real change. Later that night, as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Jake replayed every moment from the meeting. His heart ached for his father, torn between the love he felt and the direction his life was steering toward. He could almost hear his dad's voice warning him against betrayal, reminding him of the family's tradition, the expectations that accompanied it. With a huff, he turned on his side, mulling over plans and how he would change things. If only it were that easy. Suddenly, his phone buzzed beside him. It was a text from an unknown number. "Jake, I know what you're planning. You're playing with fire. Let us not pretend everything will end well for you." A chill crept down his spine. He stared at the screen, confusion and dread mixing within him. Who could it be? Was it someone from his father's side? Or someone else, trying to intimidate him? Sweat gathered on his brow as he considered the implications. Someone knew his intentions. Someone could derail everything before it even began. Jake clutched the phone tightly, heart pounding. What did they know? He could feel the walls closing in. He had to be careful. The next day at school, Jake gathered with Maria and the others, sharing his concerns. "We have to move quickly. I got a strange message last night, and I'm worried someone might be onto us," he shared, his voice low. Caution flickered in the group. "We need to keep this between us until we're ready," Maria said firmly. "If this gets back to your family, I know," Jake interrupted, urgency flooding his words. "But I can't back down now. There's too much at stake." As they built their strategy, Jake felt the pressure rising, but he also felt a sense of camaraderie. For the first time, he was part of something bigger than himself. Together, they were the embodiment of the change he desperately craved. The plan took shape, each idea more daring than the last, each one a step toward reclaiming their community. But as excitement lit their faces, Jake's mind was consumed by the message. It twisted thoughts of hope into anxiety. Days passed with constant nagging doubt, and then suddenly, an idea struck him that could propel their efforts forward. A way to expose the truth and turn his family's power against them. It was risky, but it might just work. As he shared his bold vision with the group, he felt the crowd's excitement swell. They were ready to move, ready to fight. Jake stood at the center of that energy, his heart racing. He could feel the pull of destiny again. But fear lingered just beneath the surface. Would this be the last straw for his family? What would they do if he pursued this path? The fire of resolve burned brightly as he prepared for the upcoming confrontation ahead. Would he really be able to stand up for everyone he'd come to care about? Would he risk everything for a chance at true change? Jake faced the gathering storm, holding tightly to the vision of a brighter future. What lay ahead felt daunting, but he was determined. Little did he know, the real battle was yet to come. Jake paced back and forth in the school hallway, each step heavy with uncertainty. The plan was set, but the weight of his family's legacy loomed large. He glanced at the clock above the entrance, each tick echoing in his mind like a countdown to the inevitable clash. Maria sidled up next to him, her expression a mix of determination and worry. "You ready for this?" He swallowed hard, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I have to be. There's no turning back, right?" "Right," she affirmed, her voice strong, though her eyes betrayed a hint of fear. "We're all in this together. Just remember, your voice matters. Don't let anyone drown you out." As students filed into the auditorium, Jake felt the swell of energy rise with them. Some whispered eagerly, eyes scanning the stage, while others exhibited shyness, uncertain of what to expect. He could sense their hope, their fear, mingling just as his heart raced in his chest. When the final bell rang, Jake stepped forward, taking a deep breath to steady himself. "Hey, everyone!" he called out, projecting his voice to fill the space. The room quieted, all eyes turning toward him. "Thank you for coming. We have a lot to discuss about making our school a better place for all of us." He caught Maria's eye, and she gave him an encouraging nod. Jake pressed on, "Many of you know I've been talking with some of you about changes we want to see. Changes that breathe new life into our school, that can affect each and every one of us." As he spoke, he noticed a mix of expressions. Excitement, hope, curiosity. But some faces remained skeptical, and that unease twisted in his gut. "But it won't be easy. I need your support, your voices. Together, we can stand up against the older generations who think they know what's best." A murmur swept through the crowd. He swallowed, the air thick with tension. "To do that, we need to move swiftly and strategically. If we don't, we could lose our chance." Before he could finish, a figure rose from the back. It was Sam, a well-known student who often stood on the sidelines. "What if they don't listen? What if your parents crush this before it even starts?" Jake's heart sank, but he tilted his chin up, signaling confidence he hoped to project. "We have to make them listen. They won't see us as a threat unless we show unity. We can show them we're serious and that their ways are outdated." He glanced around, searching for some sign of approval, and saw heads nodding. Encouraged, he continued, "What if we organized a demonstration? Something big to get people talking?" At this, whispers exploded through the auditorium. Some cheered, fresh enthusiasm in their voices, while others hesitated, uncertainty creeping back in. Jake felt the tightening knot in his stomach again. "We can march to City Hall. We'll gather the community, show everyone that we're not just kids. We want our future to be heard." The room buzzed with energy, some students smiling at the thought of rebellion, while others still found the idea daunting. "But we'll keep it peaceful. We're fighting for our right to be heard." As murmurs grew louder, a sudden voice cut through the excitement. A stranger, standing boldly at the edge of the crowd, raised their hand. "But what about the message you received? Are you sure we're all safe doing this?" Jake's stomach dropped. The dread of that anonymous text rushed back. Could this person be connected? "We're not going to be intimidated," he replied, trying to project confidence despite the uneasiness. The tension hung thick in the air as they waited for his next words. He glanced from Maria to the crowd, all awaiting his lead. "It's time to show them, to show my family, that we're not just names in a system. Are you with me?" Cheers erupted, the energy shifting from fear to fervor. He could feel the momentum building, but deep inside, a tiny voice questioned him. Was this really the path they needed to take? Would the fight bring only more trouble? With their determination igniting the room, Jake sensed the storm was nearing its peak. As the roar of support filled his chest with exhilaration, another thought shot through his mind: his parents would find out sooner or later. What then? He stood in front of the crowd, a whirlwind of emotions coursing through him. Simply stepping forward felt like a declaration of war. But in this moment, he realized he had to make a stand, no matter the personal cost. And just then, as the rallying cries resounded around him, his phone buzzed again, this time with a new message. The blood drained from his face as he read the screen. All he could see were the words, "I warned you, Jake. They'll come for you. Be ready." His resolve solidified into something fierce, but the reality of his choices surged within him. The true battle was just beginning, and the stakes had never been higher. Jake's heart raced. The cheers around him faded into a dull roar as he stared at his phone, the message burning into his mind. What did it mean? Panic clawed at his insides, but he steeled himself, forcing his focus back to the crowd. They were counting on him. "Listen up," he shouted, raising his voice over the uncertain whispers. "I know this feels big. It is big. But we can't let fear dictate our actions. We're standing up for something important here. Each of you matter." A ripple of determination surged back through the crowd. Jake felt buoyed momentarily, yet dread loomed in the back of his mind. "Remember, it's not just about us. It's about every single student who feels overlooked. Who thinks their voices don't count." He insisted, lifting his chin, seeking to meet the steely eyes of those who were still doubtful. A girl on the right, Emma, raised her hand. "What if we get in trouble? Your family has power. They could stop us." Jake's throat tightened. "That's a risk I'm willing to take. If we're too afraid to stand up, then nothing will ever change." Taking a breath, he let the silence settle. Shadows of doubt flickered across the auditorium, but there was something else too, a spark of resilience. "We're here because we believe in this, right?" he called out, hoping to ignite further conviction. "Right." They responded in unison, the energy shifting again. Just then, Maria stepped forward, her spirit rising, her voice firm. "We can make them listen. We really can. We'll approach them in a way that they can't ignore. Let us gather our stories, our truths. Unite them, and show them the strength in our numbers." Jake's heart swelled. Her words drifted through the air like a banner of hope, binding them together. He nodded, willing to embrace this fate despite the messages that haunted him. "Okay, let us start organizing. We'll put up posters, create messages, anything we can to build momentum. And when the time comes, we'll gather in front of City Hall. It's going to be our moment." The crowd erupted into applause and cheers. It felt electric. Jake reveled in their unity while still grappling with the weight of fear lurking. But a small voice at the back called his attention again. It was Sam. He couldn't help but feel apprehensive about his statement. "We need a plan. If we do this, we better be ready for the consequences. What if they retaliate? What if they come after you?" At that, a hush fell over the crowd. Jake could feel the weight of his family's reputation bearing down on him again. A tight knot formed in his stomach. They would come after him. He knew it. "Listen," he said, forcing steadiness into his voice. "We'll have a strategy. We'll be smart. I don't want anyone to get hurt. This is about standing up, not about violence or retaliation." He paused, looking directly at Sam before continuing. "It's about change. Real change." The crowd shifted, absorbing his words. But just as Jake felt the surge of hope rising, the screen above flickered dimly. Eyes turned to the commotion. A group of older students had stepped into the auditorium, arms crossed, faces stern. "What do you think you're doing?" one of them barked, a flicker of menace in his voice. Every heart in the room seemed to beat in sync with Jake's. The atmosphere thickened with tension as they stood their ground. Maria squeezed Jake's arm, grounding him, but he could feel the anxiety radiating from the crowd. How had it escalated so quickly? As whispers turned to wary glances, a decision loomed. Jake felt the weight of his family's legacy drive down hard on him. He couldn't back down now, not when everything was at stake. But uncertainty crept in, making his stomach churn. What would they do next? The idea of retaliation was chilling. Could he truly protect those around him while standing tall against such intimidating figures? Just then, his phone buzzed again, and he glanced down another message, more threatening this time. "They aren't just watching. They're coming for you." His heart raced as he looked back at the crowd, the stakes raising higher with each heartbeat. Time was slipping away, and he knew that a choice was before him, a choice that could change everything. The storm was brewing, and Jake could feel its intensity rising. Would he be the tempest, or could he find calm among the chaos? Around him, the murmurs began again, questions flaring into worry. But one thought remained. If he didn't act, who would? And with that thought, he took a deep breath, readying himself for what was to come. What if the next confrontation would be more than just verbal? What if it pushed them to the edge? Determination swelled, but fear lingered. As he stood at the precipice of an uncharted path, he couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to spiral out of control. The silence that followed the hostile greeting hung heavy in the air, like a storm cloud waiting to unleash its fury. Jake took a step forward, heart beating hard against his ribs. He couldn't back down now, he had come too far to let fear dictate his voice. What we're doing matters. Jake shouted, and the words echoed in the cavernous space. You can intimidate us, but we're not backing down. The group of older students exchanged glances, their smirks barely hidden. The leader, a guy with sharp features and a confidence that radiated danger, took a step closer. You think you can change anything here? What's a bunch of kids going to do against reality? In that moment, doubt flickered through Jake's mind. What if they were right? But then he glanced at Maria, her fierce gaze steady and unwavering. He drew strength from her presence, along with the others who had gathered around him. Maybe we're just kids, Jake replied, his voice tightening and growing stronger. But what we have is something you don't. We have hope. And when we unite, we are unstoppable. It's time for the adults to hear us. The crowd behind him erupted, tension transforming into fierce determination. Cheers erupted, their spirit bounced back like a rubber band stretched tight, then released. But the older students weren't backing down either. You think this is all just a game? The leader sneered. You'll regret this. We don't just walk away from a challenge. You're playing with fire. Jake's heart sank, knowing deep inside that a consequence was looming. He could feel the threat hanging in the air like a tangible force, but he pushed it aside. Focusing on the audience, he spread his arms. This isn't just about me. It's about us all facing what's wrong. If we get knocked down, we'll just get back up. Behind him, the students swelled with confidence, taking it in, believing in the power of their words. Maria yelled out, "We want to let you silence us." The older group exchanged annoyed glances. The leader raised a hand, signaling his crew to step back slightly. Fine. You think you're ready? We'll see what happens next week. Before Jake could ask what they meant by that, the crew turned and swaggered out, leaving behind a mix of confusion and lingering tension. The moment they were gone, the atmosphere in the auditorium exploded into a flurry of questions and excitement. What now? Someone shouted, while others whispered frantically, the pulse of fear still thrumming through them. Jake's body still buzzed with adrenaline. We keep going. He declared, feeling the excitement build again. We need to plan, gather our stories, and prepare for whatever they throw at us. We want to let this be the end but a beginning. The crowd rallied, adrenaline coursing through their veins, a sense of urgency fueling their passion. Posters were sketched out, shifts in responsibilities were made, and plans were shared like wildfire. It all felt electric, and Jake reveled in their fire, but thoughts of the previous message gnawed at him. Suddenly, his phone buzzed once more. He braced himself, knowing this message might be the tipping point. Hesitant, he unlocked it. The screen glared back, and his stomach dropped. You won't see it coming. But we will. Fear wrapped its icy fingers around him. He looked back up at the enraptured crowd, a collective force of change that he had never seen before. But now, was he leading them into a storm? As faces lit up with excitement, his joy felt overshadowed by the impending dread. He wanted to be their fearless leader, but what if he was leading them into danger? The day was closing in, the sun setting beyond the school building, casting long shadows across the auditorium. The two sides of Jake's world felt dangerously close to colliding. He turned to Maria, uncertainty clouding his gaze. "This is just the beginning, right?" Her brow creased as she answered, "It can be if we're ready for what comes next." Jake swallowed hard, knowing deep down that what was coming might just be far worse than he ever imagined. Did he risk their safety for the cause? Or would he find a way to protect them all? The atmosphere crackled with tension. Little did he know that the real confrontation was yet to come, and it would change everything. Was he prepared to face the storm that brewed on the horizon, or would it sweep him and the movement away? The next few days passed in a whirlwind. Jake found himself waking up every morning with a knot in his stomach. The thrill of rallying his peers faded, replaced by sleepless nights filled with anxiety over the confrontation that loomed ahead. What would the older students do? Would they retaliate? In the cafeteria, Jake and Maria sat at a corner table, a pile of books and papers scattered before them. They scribbled down ideas for the upcoming assembly, focusing on how best to present their message, but it was hard to ignore the whispers floating around the room. Conversations faded around him as he caught snippets of fear and excitement, uncertainty mixing with hope. "Jake, are you okay?" Maria's voice broke through his thoughts. She eyed him with concern, the tension in the air palpable. "Yeah, just thinking," he replied, forcing a smile. But inside, he felt like a tightrope walker inching higher without a safety net. "Look," she said, reaching across the table. "We've got this. We're strong and united. Remember what happened last week? That moment wasn't just about you speaking, it was about all of us standing together." Her words sparked something in him. He remembered how they rallied behind each other, their voices blending into a chorus of defiance. Hope ignited within him again, but it flickered ominously against the backdrop of uncertainty. "Maybe we should go over the points again," Jake suggested, trying to shift his focus away from the fear that threatened to consume him. As they reviewed their presentation, they caught the attention of some classmates nearby. A couple of friends joined their table, chiming in with ideas and stories of their own. Encouragement filled the air, and for a moment, Jake almost forgot about the threat that loomed over them, but then the door swung open, and in walked a few of the older students, laughing and shoving each other in an exaggerated manner. Jake's heart raced. They spotted him and Maria immediately. A smile crept onto the leader's face as he walked over, his gaze locked on Jake. "Well, if it isn't the Hope Brigade," the leader said, sarcasm dripping from his words. "You think you're ready for what is coming, huh?" Jake's pulse quickened. He stood his ground, determination washing over him, but the doubt still clawed at the edges of his mind. "We know what we're doing. We aren't afraid of you." The leader leaned closer, invading his space. "You should be. You really don't know what you're stirring up." As they laughed and turned away, Jake felt that knot in his stomach tighten again. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing on the brink of something dangerous. "Jake, breathe," Maria said softly, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "We can face them together." The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. As Jake gathered his things, his phone buzzed again. The new message was short, but its impact hit him like a punch. "Remember, we're always watching." The dread pooled in his stomach like a heavy stone. "What is it?" Maria asked, peering over his shoulder at the screen. "Another warning," he replied, the weight of the words heavy on his heart. Maria's eyes narrowed. "We can't let them control us. We have to focus on what we want to achieve." He nodded, but doubt lingered. His heart was caught between ambition and fear, but as they walked back to class, a flicker of resolve sparked within him. They had built something special, and he wasn't going to let it be crushed. Jake felt momentum building again, but the shadow of danger loomed larger than ever. Could he rally his friends to stand strong, or would the storm take them down before they even got the chance to speak? As they stepped into the hallway, panic mixed with excitement surged. Would their dream of change be realized, or would they awaken a force they couldn't handle? Jake turned to Maria, determination flashing in his eyes. "We can't give up now. No matter what happens, we have to be ready. But as he said it, a knot lodged deeper in his throat. What if ready wasn't enough? Classes dragged on that afternoon. Jake sat at his desk, the teacher's voice fading into a dull hum as his thoughts spiraled. He glanced at Maria, who was scribbling notes, her brow furrowed in concentration. A sense of urgency buzzed in his chest. He wanted to make her dream a reality, but the fear gnawing at him was relentless. The room felt heavy, every tick of the clock amplifying his anxiety. He imagined the auditorium filled with students, their faces a mix of hope and apprehension. What if the older students disrupted everything? What if their message, a call for respect and unity, was drowned out by insults and laughter? Jake's heart raced again. He leaned closer to Maria. What if they try to hijack the assembly? What if they stop? She whispered, cutting him off. We can't let fear dictate our actions. We've built something real here. Her eyes shone with determination. He nodded, but doubt shadowed his mind. The day trudged on, and when the final bell rang, Jake felt a mix of relief and apprehension. As students spilled into the halls, excitement mingled with the murmur of whispered conversations. The air vibrated with energy, but also with the undercurrent of tension that Jake struggled to ignore. After school, they gathered in Maria's basement, a makeshift war room filled with posters, pizza boxes, and half-empty soda cans. Jake took a deep breath, surveying the room. Friends of all grades buzzed around, their voices blending into a chorus of ideas and hopes. Listen up! Maria shouted, clapping her hands. This is our moment. We're standing up for what we believe in. No one can tear us apart. Their friends cheered, the energy pulsating through Jake's veins. In that moment, the knot in his stomach loosened. The assembly was a chance to change the narrative, to reclaim their school from the clutches of fear. Yet, just as he felt hope blooming, the door creaked open. A shadow fell across the doorway, and there stood the leader of the older students, flanked by a couple of his friends. Laughter faded, replaced by an icy silence. Didn't he expect to find you all plotting down here? The leader said, his tone dripping with disdain. Cute little meeting. Think this will change anything? Jake's heart raced, but he bit back the urge to shrink away. We're not afraid of you, he said, his voice stronger than he felt. The leader smirked, glancing around the room before laying his gaze back on Jake. You should be. You have no idea what you're doing. Maria stepped forward, bravely placing herself between Jake and the older boys. We're standing up for ourselves, and we won't back down. For a heartbeat, tension crackled in the air. It felt like a standoff, a moment suspended in time. Then, the leader laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. Enjoy your little fairy tale, he taunted, backing away with his friends. Just remember this, we're always watching. As the door slammed shut behind them, the room exploded with voices. Some were filled with anger, others with fear. Jake looked at Maria, who met his gaze with fierce determination. We can't let them intimidate us, she said, her voice steady. We have to keep going. This is about more than just us, it's about everyone who feels alone in this place. Jake nodded, feeling the weight shift. They weren't just fighting for their own little group, they were fighting for every student who felt voiceless. It was bigger than him. But still, shadows lingered in the back of his mind. Doubts crept back in. What if they pushed too hard, unleashed something they couldn't handle? Before he could voice his worries, Maria spoke again, we're going to do this. Together. Her words echoed, igniting a spark in him. Maybe they were strong enough. Maybe they could make a real change. As they finalized the plans for the assembly, heartbeats raced, fueled by adrenaline and fear. The moment of truth was approaching. Would they rise to the challenge, or face a reckoning they weren't ready for? Just then, another message pinged on Jake's phone. He glanced at it, heart sinking as he read, "You'll regret this." The thrill of standing up was met with the reality of opposition. Jake's resolve flickered momentarily. Would resolve alone hold against intimidation and threats? In that moment, they were all standing at a precipice, ready to leap. But what awaited them on the other side? Jake felt the weight of the message tugging at his heart like an anchor. The words echoed in his mind, "You'll regret this." A chill swept through the basement, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was looming just out of reach. Maria noticed the shift in his expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, her brow furrowed in concern. He hesitated, weighing his words. "It's just, what if we really are overstepping? What if they're right about us not knowing what we're doing?" "Jake," she said firmly, "we've already decided to speak out. This isn't just about us anymore. If we back down now, then we validate their fears. We owe it to everyone who has ever felt silenced." Her conviction pulled him closer to her sense of purpose. As they huddled with their friends, the energy shifted back to something electric, a shared determination weaving them together. Jake wanted to believe they could really change things, could make their school a better place. He looked around the basement, taking in the glowing faces of his friends. They were all in this together, ready to fight the shadows of doubt with the light of their passion. "Okay," Jake said, his voice rising. "Let's brainstorm a way to make our message really hit home at the assembly. We can do something bold." Cheering erupted, and Maria grinned. "Let's create an emotional video. We'll collect stories from other students about how bullying has affected them and blend it with our message of unity." The group rallied around the idea, voices overlapping as they threw out suggestions and plans. Jake felt a wave of hope wash over him, pushing away the darkness of the threat. They were going to create something meaningful. Meanwhile, doubt still lingered, like a shadow sneaking behind his determination. What if the older kids sabotaged their effort? What if the assembly was worse than he imagined? He needed to pull himself together. This wasn't just about him, it was about bringing change. As they worked late into the night, assembling clips and crafting speeches, the initial fear morphed into excitement. Laughter mixed with tears as they shared their own stories, woven together like a tapestry of resilience. The atmosphere crackled with energy, and Jake caught a glimpse of something beautiful, a vision of unity. But just as they were about to wrap up, Jake's phone buzzed again. He glanced down, his heart racing as he read the new message, his panic igniting once more. "You're not the only one who wants to be heard." This time, his heart pounded, and his hands trembled. Who was behind these messages? What did they want? He looked at Maria, their eyes locking in that moment of understanding. "Something's not right," he murmured, conscious of the urgency hanging in the air. "What are you talking about?" she asked, stepping closer. He took a deep breath. "I think we're in for more than just a fight with the older students. This feels bigger, like there's a storm brewing." Her face softened with sympathy and concern. "We'll face it together. We've come too far to let fear win now. We're ready for this." Pushing aside his anxiety, Jake tried to focus on her words, his heart racing with both hope and trepidation. They were taking a stand, but could they handle whatever was coming their way? As they dispersed for the evening, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that the assembly would be their moment of truth. What would happen when the time came? Would they inspire others, or would their voices be swallowed by the chaos? He had to brace himself for whatever was waiting in the shadows, knowing the upcoming days might change everything, for better or worse. The unvoiced questions hung in the air like a drum roll, waiting for the grand reveal. What would happen when the assembly doors opened? The morning of the assembly arrived, shrouded in a gray haze that felt heavy with tension. Jake stared at his reflection, heart pounding, a familiar knot tightening in his stomach. Would today be the day everything changed? He could practically hear the murmurs echoing through the auditorium, anticipation crackling like static. As he walked into school, students shuffled in all directions, and he could feel their curiosity and apprehension. Whispers trailed behind him. Jake tried to shake off the weight they carried. Today was about more than him. It was a chance to unite, to voice their shared struggles. Maria found him by the entrance, her presence radiating positivity. "Ready?" she asked, but her eyes danced with uncertainty. "Let us do this," he replied, forcing a smile despite the flutter of nerves in his lungs. They took their seats on the stage, surrounded by posters filled with messages of hope. Jake could see the crowd filling the auditorium, faces brightened with belief and trepidation. The energy buzzed like fireworks on the verge of exploding. The principal's voice cut through the murmur, introducing the assembly. "Today, we invite our student body to share their voices," he said, nodding toward Jake and Maria. The spotlight shifted toward them, illuminating their determined faces. "Here goes everything," Jake whispered, as they stepped forward, plugging the room into silence. Maria took a deep breath, and with unwavering focus, began, "We're not just students, we're a community." Her words flowed, strong and passionate, drawing the audience in. "It's time for us to share our experiences." Jake watched her, instantly reminded of the little victories that had led them to this moment. He felt fueled by her energy as he stepped forward beside her. He opened his mouth to speak but froze for a split second as nerves flooded through him. But he recalled everything he'd learned: the struggle, the resilience, the community. "We're here because we believe in change," Jake brought forth, passion igniting his words. "Not just for ourselves, but for everyone who feels unheard." A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd, faces shifting from skepticism to hope. "Each one of us carries stories that matter. Stories that connect us, bring us closer together." The rhythm of his heartbeat synced with the crowd's growing attention. Then, from the back, his father stood, a dark cloud in the sunlight. A stern, disapproving glare anchored itself on Jake. "Jake! You don't have to do this. Your future is already set," he called out, but Jake held his ground, fury swelling in his chest. "I have my own future. One defined by what I believe in," he shouted back, every ounce of his will challenging his father's expectations. Gasps echoed. Jake's heart raced, adrenaline flooding through him. Would this cause a rift? Yet in this moment, he felt liberated. Unchained. Then the crowd reacted. Their cheers caused waves of encouragement that radiated between them. Jake turned back to Maria, who beamed with pride. "Let us show them what it means to stand together," she urged, and they continued sharing their message amid applause. They detailed the stories they had gathered, the moments that painted the true spirit of their school, stories of bullying and camaraderie, of isolation and healing. Yet just as they rounded off their speeches, the tension in the room shifted. The older boys, who had threatened them before, began forming a line at the back. The leader grinned, the malice evident in his posture. Jake felt the atmosphere grow thunderous, but they stood united. Maria turned to the crowd again. "If we stand strong together, then we can make a change." The energy surged higher as Jake gripped the edge of the podium, fingers digging in. "We want our stories to matter. We won't let fear silence us." Suddenly, Jake's phone buzzed in his pocket. Ignoring it, he pressed forward, urging the crowd into action. They amplified their voices, pouring their hearts into a chant of unity that vibrated through the walls. Then, the noise erupted. Jake watched in horror as the older boys charged their way through the crowd. Gasps echoed, and silence fell, knees weak with uncertainty. But Jake stepped forward, adrenaline spiking. This moment could define them. "We are not afraid," he shouted. The fight wasn't about violence, it was about unity, about bravery. And then something clicked. It felt like a wave crashing through the hall. His classmates brushed past him, rallying behind their message, standing as shields. The older boys hesitated, confusion mixing with uncertainty. Students surged forward, a shield formed from courage and strength, backing Jake and Maria. "Together!" echoed through the room, and the air thickened with determination. Amid the storming emotions, Jake locked gazes with Maria. Her strength reinforced him, and they pressed on. They had transformed fear into purpose. It would not be easy, but as the crowd swelled with unity, Jake felt the burden lifting. This was more than just a fight, it was about forging a new path where everyone belonged, where every voice mattered. The older boys withdrew, faced with a collective force they never anticipated. Wheeling away, the leader spat, "You'll regret this," hurling the threat like a stone, but that moment felt like victory brewing, hope dancing in the air like confetti. They had chosen to rise. "We won, let them silence us," Jake proclaimed, and cheers erupted once more. Together, they'd risen, and at that moment, the storm outside faded beneath the brilliance of shared hope. He could feel it, the tide was shifting, and their voices were finally being heard. Jake stood in awe, a kaleidoscope of emotions unfolding as reality set in. He felt a profound change within, courage blossomed in his heart, now firmly rooted in the strength of community. What had begun as a journey of self-discovery had transformed into a movement that no one expected. As the assembly echoed with cheers and encouragement, Jake knew that whatever lay ahead, in the face of adversity, together, they would always find their strength. This was the moment their future began, no longer defined by the shadows of wealth or privilege, but illuminated by the voices of those around them. It was time to rise like never before, and Jake felt more alive than he ever had. And you can be part of these incredible transformations. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us grow strong. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this amazing ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. True fans understand how important it is to support the channel through these actions.